This happened in an old Catholic university in my city. It was quite an alarming story that students whisper about when they're in the Cadaver Room. Medical students have their own stock of cadavers that are safely stored and are used to teach human anatomy to aspiring doctors and medical workers. Our school is no different. Elaine was a young freshman student who left her hometown in the rural area to take up medicine in the big city. She was a diligent student who always pushed herself to the breaking point, burning the midnight oil, studying all night. She wanted to be the best doctor she could be. Unfortunately, this was not her eventual fate. On her last class of the day, they were studying human anatomy in the Cadaver Room. While the topic itself and being surrounded by dozens of corpses would make an ordinary person feel uneasy and alert, the effect was quite the opposite for Elaine. Just the night before, she drank 4 cups of coffee just to stay awake for the exam she had in the morning. So naturally, she was starting to doze off. Her eyes started closing slowly, and soon enough, she was sleeping like a baby. When the bell finally rang, all of the students started fixing their bags, getting ready to go home. Her classmates noticed Elaine was far away in dreamland, and they decided it would be funny to just leave her there, alone, in the Cadaver Room, laughing away as they left the room. And so, Elaine slept like a baby in the middle of all the dead bodies. No one noticed her. The janitors decided to close the large metal door of the Cadaver Room, leaving Elaine stuck inside. Naturally, the doors and windows to a place where you put cadavers is well secured. One can only imagine her horror, waking up in the night in a tightly locked room, disoriented, and then realizing that she was stuck with dozens of corpses all around her. She would have gone to the door and the windows only to realize that they were shut airtight. We can only imagine, because she was never seen alive after this. When the door of the room was finally opened, they saw her hunched up behind the metal door. Scratches on the wooden surfaces of the windows and walls indicated she was trying to claw her way out of there. On the floor, a couple of bloody fingernails, clearly from Elaine trying to scratch her way out of the room. And when they finally saw her face, they were horrified. She was dead, mouth wide open, dried tears in her eyes, staring at something on the ceiling. An investigation was launched, but it was said that she died of natural causes. A few weeks later, 2 classmates were preparing to leave the room when they noticed something odd. At the back of the room was Elaine, standing there, pointing at the ceiling. They ran for their lives. What they saw? We will never know. But until this day, no one dared stay in that room when the lights go out.
My name is Andy, and this is a true story about a mysterious room, a nondescript classroom in my Catholic school. I'll show you an actual photograph at the end of this story. The school itself is old. It was founded at the turn of the last century. Everyone in this campus knew about Classroom 33C. They say it's haunted. I never believed in those stories. That is, until I got elected in a position on our student council. Our new office was in the 3rd floor, room 33D, just across from 33C. From the glass door of our office, you can see the room and anyone in it. Classes ended at 9 p.m. It's very common to see the janitors wait outside that room and immediately rush in as students left the class. They didn't want to stay there when the students have left. Sometimes they wouldn't even bother cleaning it at night and just wait for the break of dawn instead. The council was having a late night meeting. We were busy discussing the upcoming sports festival, talking about logistics, schedules, and budgets. Suddenly, "Ah!" Michelle, one of the officers, shrieked. "What's wrong?" She was pale as a ghost. "Didn't you see it?" "What?" "The girl!" We all had a good laugh, thinking she was joking, but she was not. She never ever attended any of our late night meetings again. 2 nights later, it was 9:30 p.m. and we were busy cleaning up after a day of work. We had 30 more minutes before the school closes. We were startled by the guard looking through the glass door. He looked scared. Flustered, he sheepishly asked us to leave the school premises immediately. This was odd because we still had 30 minutes more before the school grounds closed. This guard was new, so I thought he probably didn't know the rules yet. We followed him anyway, down the dark hallway, down 3 flights of stairs. When we finally made it to the school gate, he explained why he was rushing us. He said he didn't want to be left alone anywhere near classroom 33C. I rolled my eyes because I was never convinced that there was something going on in that room, but I let him continue his story. Yesterday night on his first ever shift, he was walking alone in the dark corridor. Only the flashlight lit his path as he passed through the various rooms. He would shine it into the rooms one by one, making sure that there were no trespassers or items left behind. Then, as he approached 33C, he heard it. As he nervously and slowly used his flashlight to lit up the room, he saw the shadow of a small girl running. However, he wasn't able to get a good look at it. And then, he heard it behind him.
"Let's play!"
The little girl was wearing white, World War era uniform. He couldn't see her face. It was almost blank. He ran away, screaming. He didn't stop running until he reached the guardhouse near the gate. When he told the other guards, they weren't even surprised. They laughed it off and said, "Welcome to the club." The other student council members were scared, but I didn't buy the story. I thought it was just a way for them to get us to leave early so they can be done with their jobs quickly. Until it became my turn. A few nights later, still spooked by the story, everyone else from the student council went home at 9:30. I decided to stay and finish a few more tasks. The sports event was 3 days from then and I had a lot of extra work on my plate. Just before 10, I finished my task, locked the office door and walked down the corridor. Suddenly all the lights went out. It was not uncommon for the school to turn off the lights after 10. I was more worried that I will get a disciplinary action for violating the school curfew. I turned on my phone, using it as the only light source, and started walking. And walking. And walking? I don't recall the corridor being this long. I turned around. I was back in front of the office, and in front of 33C. I was confused, so I started walking faster. Then I heard it, a faint laughter of a child behind me. No, I'm out of here. I ran as fast as I could, for as long as I could. I had to stop and catch my breath for a while. I looked to my left. I am still in front of the office. On the reflection of the glass, I see the girl inside 33C. When I turned around to look at the room, there was no one there. And then the door started creaking open.
Come play with me.
No!
Then die.
I woke up to the two security guards, flashing their lights on my face. They heard me scream. I probably just fainted as I left the student council office. I was very relieved, still shaking up from what I think I dreamt. I tried getting up on my feet. When I finally got home, I took off my shirt and lied down on my bed. But there was a sharp pain in my back. I looked at the mirror, and there were 2 wounds that looked like claw marks behind my neck. I never stayed alone in that floor ever again, especially at night. I don't think anyone will believe me if I tell them what happened. They will think it's some story that I made up to get away from work, just like what I thought about the guard's story. I still can't explain what happened, and the stories about room 33C doesn't end there. Some people say it's the ghost of a girl who was killed during the war. Others say it's an angry, malevolent entity. 2 years after I graduated, a young female student allegedly died in that room during one of the school's events. It seems that the room is not done yet. Time and time again, they bless the rooms with holy water, including 33C. Yet the stories keep coming. 5 years ago, a group of students were taking pictures in that room, and when the picture came out, they saw this reflection on the door. They swore no one was there. I guess we will never know the full truth of the classroom. But I know what I saw, and I know what I felt, and I know that there is something not human in that room.
This happened back in the 80s to my grandmother. Until now, she can never forget this incident. It shook her to her core, for it was both truly horrifying and sad. At that time, she was in her late 40s and had a 22-year-old daughter who all called Jane to keep her anonymity. My dad was 18 at the time. As a graduation gift, Auntie Jane and her best friend and neighbor, Michelle, were going to take a trip to the beach on the southern side of the country. They were on board a passenger ship that would take them to the countryside. It was a 2-week getaway adventure for 2 girls, and they were very excited to go. My grandmother was sitting alone in her house on the first night that Jane was gone. She remembers vividly that she was watching TV and eating chips when the doorbell rang. She went to the door and peeked outside. It was Jane. She was back early. However, my grandmother couldn't really see her face as her head was bowed down looking at the floor. From what little she could discern from the peephole, Jane looked sad. My grandmother quickly opened the door. Jane was dripping wet from head to toe. It was weird, because it wasn't raining that day. Yet there she was, totally drenched. She asked what was wrong, and Jenny just replied, "I need a warm shower." Grandma let her in and Jane rushed to the toilet. Grandma waited anxiously outside. She was holding fresh clothes and just looking at the wet footprints on the floor. She heard her daughter say softly, "I love you, Mom." And she replied that she loved her back. Suddenly, her eyes widened as the strong smell of something burning hit her nose. It came from the bathroom. She quickly rushed to the toilet, opened the door, and her daughter was just gone. No trace of her at all, except for the wet footprints on the floor that were quickly drying up. She was then startled by the phone ringing. Back then, it was a landline phone. She picked it up. It was her neighbor's mom. She was crying on the phone. The neighbor said that her daughter showed up wet at her door and disappeared. Grandma said she experienced the same thing. They were both confused at the time, but after a day or two, they understood. The ship their daughters were in collided with another one, and it caught fire. The gasoline burned not only the ship, but the sea around it. There weren't enough lifeboats, and most of the passengers either burned alive or drowned. It was a massive tragedy, and to this day, one of the worst maritime disasters in the world. Both Jane and Michelle didn't make it, and their bodies were never recovered. As sad as my grandmother was for the tragic fate of her daughter, she was not scared, but happy that she got such a visit. She would later find out that they were not the only loved ones visited by the ghosts of that ship. It's been 3 decades, and Grandma sometimes gets startled when somebody rings the doorbell. Deep inside, she has never given up hope that one day Jane might come knocking once again. She believes that they will meet again, in this life or the next.
I was the basketball team captain for my small college a few years ago. Despite not being the tallest kid in the team, I compensated with work ethic, determination, and agility. Not to brag, but at that time, I was quite popular among my classmates. I was pretty proud of what I have accomplished, and there is no better place to humble brag than Instagram. My Instagram account had a modest following of 2,000 people. Not exactly influencer level, but not too shabby for an otherwise normal-looking dude. Yet my arrogance got the better of me one day when I got an offer that was too good to be true. I got one of those business inquiry emails asking if they can partner with me to market their product. It was a message in my Instagram. They were going to pay me $500 a month to post about the bar that they were going to set up. They sent me pics of the bar under construction. The owner, an elderly gentleman, said he and his wife graduated from my school and would love to have me over for dinner to discuss business. That should have really been a red flag, but I'm not gonna lie, it was extremely flattering and I wasn't really using my head at that time. They gave me an address in the middle of nowhere. You see, in my town there are rural roads that stretch on for miles. I thought, wow, these guys must have a mansion hidden away from the town center. I was driving my dad's car into the empty back roads of our town, as the GPS on my phone signaled that it was a few minutes away. It was pitch black. All I could see was an old abandoned farmhouse in the middle of the field. This creeped me out so much that I felt that I needed to take a piss. I turned off my engine and stopped my car behind a tree. I was busy doing my business when suddenly, from the abandoned farmhouse, out came 3 men. They looked very disheveled. The man in front turned on a small phone with a broken screen. As the phone lit up his face, his eyes were blood red, and he looked drugged, out of his mind. I peed faster than I've ever peed in my entire life. Suddenly, I got an Instagram message. They heard the sound from my phone and turned to my direction and started walking. My heart was pounding as I tried to make it to my car. They were now running towards me, the phone giving them light in that unbearable darkness. I was a basketball player and I could run fast, but man, these guys run fast too. I get into my car. I opened the door, but in my panic, I dropped my keys. They were closer now. I managed to pull myself together, and even with shaking hands, got the key into the hole. Then, I slammed the doors shut. They tried hitting my window, but it didn't break. I backed my car up. I turned it around and drove as fast as I could. From the rearview mirror, I could see the three guys running towards me. Fortunately, they just couldn't keep up. My phone was blowing up with messages from the old man, who obviously was not really an old man. They were hurling insults at me. They said, "You're a dead man." My heart was still pretty much pounding in my chest. I called the police, recklessly driving while on the phone. In the following days, I discovered that there were already 2 missing persons reported in our town from the past month alone. I am very convinced that what I experienced could have been the starting point, with potentially the same outcome. The farm that I was lured to had been abandoned for years. I began speaking out to my town about the dangers of Instagram. I now set my Instagram to private. It was very terrifying at the time, but a bit amusing in hindsight. My life was saved by me peeing. I just can't imagine what horrors would have happened to me if I was just a bit closer to the farmhouse, or if I didn't stop at all. If they got me, in all likelihood, the only pictures you will see of me are on missing posters. Just about every other woman I know has received that unsolicited message from a stranger saying, "Hey." It's usually from boys swallowing their pride and trying their luck. And more often than not, it just leads nowhere. In my case, when I was 23, it was traumatizing. A bit of background: I used to live in a small town with about 7,000 people. When I got into a uni, I moved to the big city to pursue my degree in physics. I had a dorm room to myself, fortunately. I've kept close contact with my parents and friends, and I keep updating them with pictures on Instagram. It tends to be pretty random pictures, like what I was having for breakfast, or quick funny stuff I learned during our lectures. One night, I got a message from a former classmate in 4th grade. Let's call him Billy. "Hey," he said. At first I didn't really recognize him. When we were kids, He was that quiet, strange kid in the back of the room. Rich but weird kid. He got into trouble once because he actually kicked a stray cat during one of our field trips. He never really spoke to me, but he had this weird stare. I checked his Instagram profile, and I saw that he didn't look well. He was very skinny, almost skin and bones. His eyes are sunk deep, and he has this fake, creepy smile in every picture. In any case, he was still a former classmate, and I was pleasantly surprised that he messaged me. I said hello, of course, and started a long, albeit polite, conversation. I was bored anyway. After about 15 minutes of this, I got sleepy, and I told him goodnight, and that was that. Or so I thought. I woke up at 7 in the morning for my daily jog. I had 5 messages from Billy, each with a 15 to 30 minute intervals. All it says is, hey, how are you? Oh, you must be sleeping. Hey, I replied that yes, I was sleeping and that I would appreciate it if he doesn't message me in the morning. Fortunately, he never did. But at the strike of noon exactly, I got it again. Hey, I replied. Sorry, I am busy now. After an hour, he sent another message. Hey, how about now? I was getting really irritated with this and asked him to please stop. But he never did. So I said I am done with this clingy conversation, and I decided to just block him. That night, I was telling my mom about this on Skype. She shrugged it off and told me not to mind the poor boy. So I did. I studied late into the night when suddenly my mom was calling me on Skype. She said that I should open Billy's Facebook. I scrolled down on his Facebook timeline and... what? He's claiming he has a long-distance relationship with me. How? I never got a notification from Facebook to approve this. I clicked the account with my name, and it is an exact replica of my account. Every picture, post, and status update was copied, except there are pictures of me in the university, eating breakfast at a restaurant, having coffee, reading a book in a park bench. This could only mean he was here. I got really paranoid and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I immediately reported it to Facebook. After an hour, the account was gone. Tired and bewildered, I decided to go to sleep. I awakened to a knock on my door. At first I wasn't sure if I heard it, but then the knock got louder. Hey! I jolted up on my bed. I told him to leave or I will call the cops. He said he just wanted to talk about us. I said there were no us. He kept insisting that we were meant to be together ever since we were kids, and it's no coincidence that we are now in the same school. I dialed campus security. Then, I heard a loud thud. He is trying to break down the door. The chain lock is starting to give way. Hey! He said. I just want to talk. Give me that at least. And then he called me all sorts of nasty names. The campus security isn't picking up. He was still shouting at me, trying to break the door. What are you doing here? This is the female dorm. A woman's voice in the corridor said. It appears that other people in the dorm were awakened by him, going ballistic. He just straight up left. The next day, I made sure to report to campus authority. I had my witnesses, my sisters with me. However, they never really found Billy. He never came back to campus. We don't really know where he went. But his parents are wealthy, so I am sure they were able to figure something out. There is a restraining order on Billy now. I hope to never meet him ever again. On his Facebook profile, we are no longer together in a relationship. In fact, everything on his profile has been deleted. No posts, no pictures, nothing. Except a one-word post. Someday.
I'm a 30-year-old teacher, teaching in a rural area. And by rural, I mean somewhere in the middle of a dense jungle in North Borneo. I came from ancestors who practiced witchcraft so long ago. These people, called Bobalian, are imputed to have supernatural gifts back in the day, including the ability to communicate with other entities from other realms. Mind you, this happened before religions were introduced in our place. However, these gifts, or some people called a curse, were passed through generations, and although were not much talked about nowadays, they still could be observed here and there within our family. One night, I remembered the moon was full. I was awakened by a loud howling just outside the hut. So I decided to peek through a small slit between the walls. There, in the darkness, was a glowing white wolf howling at the beautiful moon, with crimson red eyes and fur that just mesmerized me. It reflected the full moon and it glowed so gracefully, and the area became as bright as day. My grandparents woke me up. They told me it was the spirit of the jungle, and I was really lucky to be able to see it. That was the opening of my eyes to the supernatural world. This year, when the pandemic hit our country and schools were closed, I was at home around midnight having a snack. I heard a knock on the front door. There was this feeling when I heard it of impending darkness and doom. I dared not open it. This felt real, a premonition. And while the house was fully lit, I felt the darkness embrace me, the feeling of death. The next day, I found out that someone I knew in our village passed away. This has become a common thing in my life now. The water supply system in my school broke down. There was a small creek located at the hill's foot where we usually go for our bath. It was dusk, and we were only accompanied by the light from our torchlights. It was all normal until the day after. During recess time, we all gathered at the canteen to talk about how we needed the water supply system fixed, so we don't have to take our bath at the creek again. I asked my friends if they saw the woman and her child that were there at the creek with us last night. The lunch lady overheard our conversation and began telling us this, that there was a pregnant woman who passed away a long time ago right at that river where we usually go. I asked when this happened, and it was the same age as the child. All I could tell them was this. Well, the child is all grown up now and seems happy with his mother, and they are still together. The dark web is a risky place. While there's many stories about red rooms of pain and suffering and the ability to hire killers, the scariest part about that place is that you really don't know who you're talking to or where they are. James loved the dark web. He's been surfing the underbelly of the internet for over a decade now. From there, he was able to buy his contraband movies and guns. He was able to get stock trading advice. Recently, he got a huge amount from betting on the right companies, hundreds of thousands of dollars. As a reward for his stock market success, James decided to try something new: loot boxes. These are boxes with random items that you can buy online and have delivered to your front door. They never really tell you what's inside the box. James had seen videos of YouTubers opening these boxes. Some contain creepy dolls, some human hair or blood, while others are pretty lame with just regular random trinkets. He put in his address, clicked the buy button, paid with cryptocurrency, and logged off. He told his wife, Candace, who works in tech, that he had spent over $1,000 on 5 boxes, and she was not pleased. This led into a huge argument that somehow spiraled out of proportion. In the end, she decided that it would be best to stay with her parents for a week or so. She never arrived at her parents' house. James got the call that his wife hadn't come home. He wasn't too worried. Maybe she just needed some time alone. It'd been a tense year for both of them with a lot of fights lately. He was startled by an alert on his phone. The boxes had arrived. He opened the door and found the boxes on the ground. They were numbered 1 to 5. He brought the packages inside his house. There was a small piece of paper with a note that says, "Let's play a game. Open number 1. He opens the package. His eyes widened as he saw it. A small, crumpled piece of paper with blood stains. There's something inside. A ring. His wife's wedding ring. As he fully opens it, there's a note written in blood. "We see you. If you call the cops, we send you the finger too. If you don't play the game, we will send her head." James quickly opened the second box. Inside, another sheet of paper. It contains a link to a dark web.onion page. He rushes to his computer and types in the URL. At first, it was a red dot on the screen. Then the red dot expands into an image of a red-colored room. Inside that room, we can see various tools on the wall. Hammers, drills, knives. The camera pans to the center of the room. There, illuminated by a ceiling light, is a woman tied to a chair. A sack over her head. She seems unconscious. A man wearing a wolf mask appears behind the woman and pulls off the sack. It's his wife. Candace didn't look harmed in any way, just unconscious. The man approaches the camera. He brings out a large piece of paper. It says, "Box number 3. A small window appeared on the side, and James can see himself. His webcam is open somehow, a trick that's commonly used by hackers. The third box has a script that needs to be read out loud for the camera. At first he hesitates, but then seeing his poor wife tied there, shaking, he had no choice. "I did it. I cheated on her. It was a 3-month affair. She was heartbroken. We were never the same after. Please don't kill her. This is all my fault. I ordered those boxes. I was the abusive husband. Take me instead." The guy nods and tells him to open the 4th box. Inside is a QR code linking to a Bitcoin account. "How much do you want?" he asks. The guy replies in a fake voice, "All." Without hesitation, James transferred all his earnings in cryptocurrency to this guy. "Okay, now free her." The man brings out a piece of paper that says, "Box number 5. Inside the box, there's a piece of paper. It says, "We will set her free if you burn everything in the boxes and use this on yourself. Inside the box is a noose. Teary-eyed, James looks at the screen one more time. The masked guy brings out a drill. The man with the wolf mask turns on the drill and brings it closer to Candace's face. "I'll do it," he says. The drill turns off. Tributes for James are all over his social media. Gone too soon, they say. Candace reads all of them on her table, with a vague expression on her face. She takes a sip of the pina colada in her hand. Southeast Asia is beautiful in the summer. Best of all, you can't be sent back to the United States for your crimes. With the Bitcoin money successfully transferred to her account, she can retire happily and anonymously with her new boyfriend. The scariest part about the dark web is that you don't really know who you're talking to or where they are. For all you know, they could be in your house, sleeping beside you in your bed every night, plotting, planning. Candace's life has changed for the better for her and her new lover. But James isn't done with them yet. Two can play that game. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to Fright TV Animations. Hit the notification bell so you're notified every time we upload new content.